The band was playing our song. My daughter was glowing in white. I'd just straightened my tie, ready to meet her future. Then her fiancé put a hand on my shoulder, steered me toward a tall man in a suit, and laughed. "This is Emma's dad," he said. "Don't worry about him. He's just an unemployed loser." The man chuckled politely. Someone behind me snickered. My daughter's smile froze. And right there, in the middle of her wedding, with champagne in my hand and pride in my chest, I felt something inside me shatter and something else wake up. My name is Charles Whitman. I'm 63 years old. At my daughter's wedding, her fiancé humiliated me in front of his boss. 3 weeks later, he learned exactly how big a mistake that was. The worst part wasn't the words. It was the way people pretended not to hear them. I stood there in the reception hall, lights twinkling, flowers arranged perfectly, the band playing a soft jazz number. My future son-in-law, Ryan, grinned up at his boss. "Don't mind Charles," he said again, as if reading from a script. "He's been out of work for years." His boss, a broad-shouldered man with silver hair, gave me the bland half-smile people reserve for charity cases and awkward relatives. He held out a hand. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Whitman." I shook it. My fingers were steady. My stomach wasn't. "I'm between things at the moment," I said calmly. "Old habit. Deflect, soften, smile. Retired early, you could say." Ryan snorted. "Yeah, early. Sure." His boss glanced at him, frowning slightly, as if debating whether the joke had gone too far, then turned away to greet another guest. Ryan clapped me on the back, just a shade too hard. "Relax, Charles. I'm just messing around." Messing around. The words hung in the air like stale smoke. I watched him swagger back toward the head table where my daughter Emma sat, her veil tipped back, cheeks flushed from dancing. She caught my eye. For a second I saw it, the tiny furrow between her brows, the question in her gaze. "Are you okay, Dad?" I forced a smile and lifted my glass, the universal sign for everything's fine. My chest burned. People see a man in his 60s and they think they know his story. They see graying hair, lines around the eyes, a suit that's a few seasons old. They don't see the decades behind it. They don't see the businesses started and lost, the overnight flights, the hospital waiting rooms, the mortgage payments made on time. 2 years ago, I sold my software company. Not a flashy unicorn exit, but enough to live comfortably if I watched my spending. Then my wife, Laura, died. Cancer. Fast. Cruel. After that, I stepped away from consulting work. I didn't have the heart to sit in boardrooms while my house echoed. To the outside world, it looked like I'd stopped working. To Ryan, it became a punchline. The first time he made a crack about it was at a family dinner. "Must be nice," he'd said, cutting into his steak. "Lounging around all day while the rest of us grind." Emma had nudged him, eyes warning. "Rye, don't." I'd brushed it off. "It's okay," I'd said. "I've done my grinding." But it hadn't stopped. Little remarks, side comments. "You wouldn't get it, Charles. You don't have deadlines." I told myself I was being sensitive, that he was just young, full of bravado and insecurity. I wanted my daughter happy more than I wanted my pride. So I stayed quiet. But standing in that reception hall, champagne sweating in my hand, hearing the words "unemployed loser" attached to my name like a label, that silence turned into something else, something sharp. I wandered away from the crowd, past the gift table and the bar, through a side door that led to the balcony. The air outside was cold and clean. Denver's skyline glittered in the distance. I leaned on the railing, let the night wind cool the heat in my face. Dad? Emma's voice, soft, careful. I turned. She stepped out onto the balcony, lifting the hem of her dress slightly to avoid the threshold. Her hair was pinned up with the same pearl comb Laura had worn on our wedding day. For a moment, my anger cracked, and all I saw was my little girl in a dress that didn't quite fit, asking if she could have another slice of cake. She came to stand beside me. "Are you all right?" I forced a smile. "Of course, it's your wedding day. I'm fine." She rolled her eyes softly. "Dad, you know I can tell when you're lying." I hesitated. She'd heard something. Maybe not every word, but enough. "I don't want to cause a scene," I said. "You won't," she replied. "But Ryan shouldn't talk about you like that." The knot in my chest loosened a little. "At least one person thinks so," I murmured. She sighed. "He's nervous. His boss is here. His coworkers are here. He gets weird when he's trying to impress people." "Impressing people by stepping on someone else," I said quietly, "is still stepping on someone else." She bit her lip. "Do you want me to talk to him?" I looked at her, really looked, and saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile had been stretched too tight all evening. She was in love. She thought this was normal. She thought she could fix him. "Not tonight," I said finally. "This day is about you. You deserve joy, not drama." Her eyes shimmered. She squeezed my hand. "You deserve respect," she whispered back. For a moment, we stood together in the cold, the music from inside muffled by the glass doors. "I miss her," she said suddenly. I didn't have to ask who. "I do too," I replied. Moments later, the DJ's voice boomed. "Time for the father-daughter dance." Emma smiled up at me, blinking away the moisture in her eyes. "Ready, Dad?" "Always," I said. We walked back inside. The guests clapped politely. Ryan stood near the head table, arm around his boss, laughing at something. He avoided my eyes. The song started, a slow, familiar tune Laura and I used to hum while doing dishes. As we swayed, Emma rested her head against my chest. "Thank you for everything," she murmured. "Not just today, all of it." A lump rose in my throat. I swallowed it down. When the song ended, I kissed her forehead and let her go. Later, after the bouquet toss and the speeches and the cake, I watched Ryan work the room. He laughed too loud. He bragged about his job in software sales, about the promotion he was definitely getting. He introduced his boss again and again, like the man was a trophy. At one point, I heard him say, "Emma's lucky. I'll make sure she never has to rely on anyone else." The irony almost made me choke. By the end of the night, I'd made a decision, not to ruin the wedding, not to fight in front of guests, but I would no longer be the quiet man standing in the corner while some insecure boy rewrote my story. I didn't know how yet, but I had time. What Ryan didn't know was that his esteemed boss, the man he was so desperate to impress, had once sat across a negotiation table from me 12 years ago. Back then, I'd walked away from a deal with that company because their ethics made me uneasy. They'd changed names since then, merged, rebranded, but some things, no matter how polished the logo, don't really change. I watched Ryan shake hands, all swagger and charm, and thought, "Son, you have no idea who you just called a loser, and you have no idea what I know about the people you're so eager to please." That knowledge, stored away for over a decade, was about to become very, very important. I didn't sleep the night of the wedding. I replayed the moment again and again. Ryan's smirk, the casual cruelty, the way he dismissed me like lint on his sleeve. But it wasn't the insult that kept me awake. It was the look in Emma's eyes when she heard it, the flicker of doubt, then shame, then forced calm. My daughter should never feel she has to defend me at her own wedding. By sunrise, I knew something had to change. 3 weeks passed. Emma texted me often, like she sensed something brewing beneath the surface. I never brought up the wedding. She didn't either. But the silence between us felt heavier each day. Then, one morning, a message arrived from an unknown number. "Mr. Whitman, this is Daniel Grayson, Ryan's boss. We need to speak, urgently." I stared at the screen. Urgently? I called him back. "Mr. Grayson," I said. His voice was tense. "Thank you for calling. I didn't get a chance to speak with you much at the wedding." "That's all right." "It's not," he said. "In fact, I owe you an apology." I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For laughing when Ryan introduced you the way he did. It was inappropriate, and frankly, stupid." There was genuine shame in his voice, but that alone wouldn't explain urgent. "I appreciate that," I said. "But why the urgency?" There was a pause. "I'd rather speak in person," he said. "It concerns your son-in-law and his position with our company." I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair. "I see." "Could you spare an hour today?" he asked. I glanced at the clock. "Yes, I can." "Good. Come to the corporate office at noon, and, Mr. Whitman." "Yes?" "Please bring an open mind." The corporate building was all glass and steel, a polished shell hiding whatever truths lived inside. I checked in at reception. Grayson himself came down to meet me. No arrogance, no superiority. Just a man who looked like he'd been carrying too many secrets for too long. He led me to his office, large but strangely empty, as if he never spent more than necessary hours inside. The moment the door closed, his expression changed. "Charles," he said, dropping the formal tone, "I know who you are." I blinked. He pulled out a tablet and swiped across the screen. "This was you, wasn't it?" He turned the device toward me. A photo appeared, grainy, old, taken in a boardroom 12 years ago. Me, younger, sharper eyes, suit perfectly pressed, from a meeting I remembered very well. "I walked away from that deal," I said quietly. "Yes," he replied, "and many of us know exactly why." I narrowed my gaze. Grayson exhaled. "Look, I'm not allowed to disclose details, but I will tell you this. The group running this company before the merger was involved in some serious illegal practices." I nodded once. "I suspected." He gave a half laugh. "You didn't just suspect. From what I've heard, you confronted them." I said nothing. "Charles," he continued, "you were right about them, and they never forgot the man who cost them a $30 million expansion." A chill ran through me. "You're saying they know who I am. They remember the name Whitman," he said, "and when Ryan introduced you as a nobody," he shook his head. I almost laughed out loud. Not at you, at the ridiculousness of it. He sat down heavily. "But that's not why I called you." He pulled up another screen. "Ryan has been trying to impress upper management for months, and in the process, he's been doing things he shouldn't." My pulse quickened. "What things?" Grayson hesitated, but only for a moment. "He's been forging client signatures." The air left my lungs. "And last week," Grayson continued, "we discovered he altered 3 contracts, inflated numbers, and rerouted commissions." A dull ringing filled my ears. "Does Emma know?" I asked. "No," he said softly, "and I don't think Ryan intends to tell her." I shut my eyes. That boy. A sudden sharp anger rose inside me. Not for myself, not even for the insult, but for my daughter, who had no idea the man she married was hiding a fire that was about to burn her life down. "What do you need from me?" I asked quietly. Grayson studied me. "I need to know what kind of father you are." "Excuse me? Are you the type to protect your child, or the type to let consequences teach the lesson? I clenched my jaw. What are my options? We can fire him, he said. Press charges. It will wreck him. And Emma? I asked. She'll be devastated. My throat tightened. Or, Grayson said, lowering his voice, we can give him one chance, a single meeting, a last warning, but it has to come from someone he respects or fears losing. Understanding settled over me like a weight. You want me to be there, I said. I want you to speak, Grayson corrected. If you tell him to straighten up, he might. If we tell him, he won't listen. I sipped the coffee he'd placed on the table earlier. It had grown cold. Why me? I asked finally. Because, Grayson said, leaning forward, Ryan may pretend you're insignificant, but I saw his face when he insulted you at the wedding. What about it? He kept glancing at you afterward, Grayson said, like he was checking if you'd heard. His arrogance is the loud part. His fear of disappointing you is the quiet part. That hit harder than the insult ever had. Grayson continued, You can protect him, or you can let him crash. Either way, the decision belongs to you. I stared at the tablet, at the forged signatures, at the numbers Ryan had manipulated. My daughter loved him, and he was about to destroy her stability, her trust, her future. Grayson stood, extending his hand. The meeting is tomorrow at 10 a.m. You don't have to decide now. I shook his hand. Thank you, I said. In advance, he replied. Thank me later. Then, more softly, Emma doesn't deserve to be blindsided. That night, I sat at my kitchen table until midnight. A father's instinct is to protect. A man's instinct is to enforce consequences. A husband's memory, my memory of Laura, whispered the same truth over and over. Teach him who you are. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that fire return. Tomorrow, Ryan learns exactly who Charles Whitman really is. I didn't hear from Ryan for the rest of the day. Not a call, not a text, just silence. Part of me wondered if he'd actually go home and tell Emma the truth. Another part of me wondered if he even had the courage. By evening, I'd almost convinced myself he wouldn't. When headlights cut across my driveway, the car doors shut, footsteps approached, and then a soft knock. When I opened the door, Emma stood there, alone. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. Dad, she whispered. My heart sank. Come inside, I said gently. She stepped in, wrapped her arms around herself, and stood in the middle of my living room, as if afraid everything around her might collapse. I didn't know, she said, voice trembling. I didn't know any of it. I poured her some water, set the glass in front of her, and waited. She stared at it without drinking. Ryan told me everything, she finally said. The forged contracts, the money, the meeting with you and his boss. I took a slow breath. And the way he spoke about you, she added, tears welling. Dad, I'm so sorry. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. You didn't say it, I said softly. He did, she shook her head. But I defended him, she whispered. I told myself he was just stressed, or insecure, or trying too hard. I excused everything, even the way he treated you at the wedding. Her voice cracked. I thought, if I just loved him enough, he'd change. I felt that hit me deep. I had once believed the same thing, about people, about life, about giving second chances. What do you want to do? I asked gently. She wiped her cheeks. I asked him why he did it, she said. And do you know what he said? I waited. He said he thought I'd be proud of him if he got a promotion. He said he thought proving himself mattered more than honesty. She looked up at me, eyes burning. I told him I don't want a husband who lies for a living. I don't want a husband who steps on people. And I don't want a husband who disrespects my father. A quiet, heavy moment passed. Dad, she whispered, I didn't marry the man I thought I did. I squeezed her hand. People show their character one moment at a time, I said. You saw who he really is. That's not your fault. She inhaled shakily. He left, she said. He packed a bag and said he needed time to think. I think he's scared of himself. Or of changing. Or both. I nodded slowly. And you? I asked. She exhaled, long, tired, relieved. I'm staying with Mom's values, she said. She used to tell me, a man's true worth is how he treats people who can't give him anything. I smiled sadly. She was right. Emma reached across the table and hugged me, tight, desperate, like a child again. Thank you for standing up for me, she whispered into my shoulder, even when I didn't see what was happening. I hugged her back. Thank you, I murmured, for finally seeing me. We stayed that way for a long time. When she finally pulled away, she wiped her eyes and managed a small, trembling smile. Dad, she said softly, I'm proud of you. Those words, simple, fragile, beautiful, hit me harder than any insult ever could. As she left, coat wrapped around her shoulders, she turned at the door. We're having dinner tomorrow, she said. Just you and me. No lies, no disrespect, just family. Just family, I echoed. The door closed behind her. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel empty. It felt honest. And as I turned off the lights and walked down the quiet hallway, I said one final thing to myself. A loser doesn't raise a daughter this strong. The conference room was quiet. Too quiet. Glass walls, cold light, one long table stretching between me and the boy who had married my daughter. Ryan sat slouched in his chair, tapping his foot restlessly. He looked tired and scared, maybe for the first time since I'd known him. Grayson entered. No greetings, no smiles. Just a folder dropped on the table with a soft thud that echoed louder than any shout. We're here because of you, he said to Ryan. Not your team, not your deadlines. You. Ryan stiffened. What is this? A performance review? No, Grayson replied. A reality check. He pushed the folder toward him. Ryan hesitated before opening it. When he finally flipped through the pages, the forged signatures, the altered numbers, the rerouted commissions, his face drained of all color. I can explain. No, Grayson cut him off. You can't, because this isn't a misunderstanding. This is deliberate. Ryan's hand shook. I only did it because you wanted a promotion, Grayson said. Because you wanted to prove yourself. Because your ego doesn't fit in your chest. Ryan clenched his jaw. So what? He snapped. You just fire me? After everything I've done? Grayson folded his arms. You? Done? You've been here 18 months. Ryan opened his mouth to fire back, but stopped when he saw me watching him. Something shifted in his eyes. Anger, then embarrassment, then something closer to fear. Charles, he said, voice cracking. Tell him I'm not a bad guy. Tell him I'm not what this makes me look like. I didn't move. He swallowed hard. Please, you're Emma's father. You know me. I leaned forward, fingers interlaced on the table. Do I know you, Ryan? Because at your wedding, you introduced me as an unemployed loser. He flinched. That wasn't serious. But this is, I said quietly. This folder, these choices, this path. This is who you really are. He stared at the table. I just wanted to impress people, he whispered. By lying? I asked. By stealing? I was trying to build a future for Emma. I shook my head. No, you were trying to build a future for yourself. And you were fine stepping on anyone, including me, to get there. He pressed a hand to his forehead. So what happens now? I looked at Grayson. He nodded once, signaling that the next words were mine to give. So I looked Ryan in the eyes. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to keep your job, barely, but in a lower position. No bonuses, no promotion this year, no more shortcuts. Ryan blinked in surprise. You're not letting them fire me. No, I replied, but not for you, for Emma. Relief washed over his face. Too quickly. I leaned in. But listen to me very carefully, I said, voice steady, controlled. This is the last time I save you from your own stupidity. From this moment forward, you treat my daughter with respect. You treat me with respect. And you stop pretending you're better than the people whose shoulders you stand on. He swallowed. Yes, I will, I swear. And Ryan, I added, if you ever humiliate me again, I won't come to your boss next time. He nodded rapidly. I understand. Good, Grayson said, closing the folder. Because Charles just gave you a gift most men in your position never get. Ryan stood, shaky, humbled. He reached out a hand to me. I didn't take it. Not yet. Instead, I said, go home. Tell Emma everything. Tonight. And the fear in his eyes told me he knew. This time, he couldn't lie his way out.